This is Jen with Spectra Baby USA, and we are here today to talk about alcohol use during breastfeeding and pumping. So, as July 4th is coming up, it's tomorrow. We all know that there's going to be some drinks that might be passed around during that celebration, and it's a hot topic that a lot of moms are always wondering about. You type into your search browser, can I drink alcohol while breastfeeding or while pumping? And you get a lot of different information that's out there. There's not really a clear-cut recommendation or a clear-cut answer as to can I be drinking while breastfeeding, while pumping? One thing as an IBCLC that I hear a lot, whether it's friends, family, moms that come to me in the professional capacity, they always say, do I really need to be purchasing these alcohol test strips? I don't know if anybody's ever seen those or heard about them. I know about 10 years ago when they came out, it was kind of a big thing that the company was coming to a lot of us in the industry and wanting us to endorse it, to provide feedback or a quote. And I'm not saying that they're completely irrelevant, but what I will say and what we'll talk about today is not only what the leading associations, the leading agencies, the leading authorities in the field across the world are saying about the use of alcohol while breastfeeding. But what I will say in reference to those test strips is that it's not really warranted. And let's really look at why that's the case. Because if you're drinking and you're pumping or breastfeeding, what you'll realize is that once it's metabolized out of the blood, it is metabolized out of the milk. So when you're testing your breast milk and it's coming back as positive that there is alcohol present, then you really are looking at how quickly the mom is metabolizing it out. So anyway, with all of that being said, let's really look at the top 5 things that I really want to convey today during this live webinar. And again, it is a question and answer, so please jump in with any questions that you might have so that we can address those during this time as well, okay? So again, happy July 4th early. Usually we have our question and answer on Wednesdays. But since tomorrow is a holiday, we decided to do this a little bit sooner, the day before, in preparation for those July 4th celebrations. So let's talk about the rule of thumb, I would say, when it comes to pumping, breastfeeding, and ingesting alcohol. So the biggest rule of thumb comes from Dr. Thomas Hale. Dr. Thomas Hale is one of the industry's leading authorities when it comes to medications and breastfeeding when you're pregnant and when you're breastfeeding. So let me back up a little bit. Dr. Thomas Hale is with the Infant Risk Center, and it is a fantastic resource. All they do is research how medications affect breastfeeding and pregnant mothers. So this quote is from Dr. Thomas Hale, and what he indicates is mothers who ingest alcohol in moderate amounts can generally return to breastfeeding as soon as they feel neurologically normal. What does that mean? Just like we talked about, once the milk is metabolized out of the blood, it's metabolized out of the milk. So let's take a step back and let's think about that for a second. If you are impaired to be driving, to be functioning, then you really should not be taking care of your little one, right? And the same thing goes with you should not be pumping or breastfeeding, right? If you're not feeling neurologically normal to be driving, to be functioning, or taking care of a newborn, you really should not be breastfeeding or pumping. Make sense? Somebody asked, I've heard 2 drinks is the limit. Is this true? What kind of alcohol would this entail? Beer versus wine or other? Okay, so even the most leading authorities, such as the CDC, the World Health Organization, the Academy of Pediatrics, the Academy of Family Physicians, Dr. Thomas Hale, Dr. Frank Nice, that is also with Nice Breastfeeding, a lot of these different professionals in the industry that have researched it to the nth degree, all of the research that's out there, and really looked at all of these different resources. What it really indicates is 1 to 2 drinks does not show any effects, long-term or short-term, on the little one. However, if the baby is under 3 months of age or premature, you really need to look at that with a little bit more caution. So what that means is the baby's liver is a lot more immature and it takes longer to process it out. Okay, so the reason why that there's that two drink recommendation that's out there and that's still swirling around is because usually based on the average height, weight, and metabolism of the average female American or the average mother, it usually takes about, the same amount of time that it would take for the next feeding, whether it's pumping or breastfeeding, for that alcohol to metabolize out. So one of the recommendations that we have on the infographic that we'll provide to you guys is that the alcohol peaks at about 30 to 60 minutes in the milk after you drink it. So you have a beer, you have a wine, you have a shot, okay? And the CDC has a wonderful infographic out there that shows you what one drink would entail. So many ounces of wine, so many ounces of beer, so many, a shot, for example. What does that one drink entail? And it peaks in the breast milk, in the blood, about 30 to 60 minutes after you drink it. So if you think about it, it's best, because it's most likely metabolized completely out in about 2 hours. So if the average baby is nursing 8 to 12 times a day, then that's where that 2 drink limit really kind of came from, because by that point, it's at a lot more safe capacity, if that makes any sense, that you're going to be at a point neurologically where you can breastfeed or be pumping, and that you can be taking care of baby, and that the majority of that alcohol has already metabolized out. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm trying not to put a lot of jargon in this so that it's easy to more or less digest with all of our parental brains, because a lot of us probably have a lack of sleep. So the biggest thing to keep in mind is that, number one rule of thumb is that if you are able to neurologically function and take care of baby, then you're more likely able to be breastfeeding or pumping. So it's not what you call contraindicated. In other words, it's not that you cannot be drinking and breastfeeding, or you cannot have a beer or a glass of wine or a drink and then be pumping or breastfeeding. That is not accurate. In moderate amounts, it is perfectly safe to be ingesting alcohol and breastfeeding or pumping. However, just like anything in life, moderation is key, and it's important that you are still able to be functioning to the ability where you're able to safely take care of your infant. A lot of individuals will say, it's that baby will sleep better or baby will fall asleep faster. Well, a lot of studies show that baby may fall asleep quickly. However, they wake up more frequently and their sleep is more interrupted. So that's not true. The other thing to look at is that when mom is ingesting more than about 2 drinks, studies have shown that babies ingest less than 20% or 20% less, at breast. So it's really important to keep that in mind also, that if you're going to be, ingesting alcohol, also be aware that you really need to be encouraging a really healthy feed after that 2-hour wait time for baby, because usually it's the smell of the breast milk that baby will ingest. At least that's from what we can gather. That's why babies usually do nurse about 20% less when mother does ingest alcohol. So keep that in mind also. So there is a question here. What about pumping and dumping? Can't imagine wasting that liquid gold. I love that. So that is a wonderful question. And that's also on our infographic that we'll provide to you today. The number one, or not number one, excuse me, the last point that we actually have highlighted on the infographic is that pumping and dumping is not necessary. A lot of moms will hear, they will read, if you have a drink, you need to pump and dump. And it kind of goes back to those milk strips that we talked about early on, where mom is testing her breast milk and it comes back positive, which often is such a minute amount that may be present that still has not metabolized out yet, that mom feels that she has to be dumping. However, if we go to another leading organization, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, they came out with a great website that is dedicated to it. And one of their biggest quotes in it is, expressing or pumping milk after drinking alcohol and then discarding it, otherwise known as pumping and dumping, right, does not reduce the amount of alcohol present in the mother's milk more quickly. So just because you're pumping and dumping does not mean that the alcohol will be removed from your system more quickly. No, it's going to metabolize out. It's going to come out of your milk at the same rate that it's coming out of your bloodstream. So just because you're pumping and dumping really does not change how fast it's going to be out of your bloodstream and out of your milk. So Maria asks, is it true that alcohol takes 30 minutes to get into your system? Therefore, it's best to have a drink right after pumping and nursing. So it's not true that it takes 30 minutes. It actually peaks at its highest level between 30 and 60 minutes after ingestion. It does not take 30 minutes to get into the breast milk. It actually hits the breast milk as soon as it's hitting your bloodstream. So it's actually peaking at its highest point, its highest level in the breast milk and in the bloodstream at about 30 to 60 minutes after you ingest it, after you drink it. And that is based upon the mother's height, her weight, her build, her metabolism, basically. So just like all of us have a different tolerance, right? It's been a while since you drank and you have a glass of wine and you might be really quick. However, you have a friend that might be a little thinner or a little heavier set, and they can take that same time period and they take that glass of wine and it does nothing. So again, that, based upon your different build and how you're made up is going to also depend upon when it's peaking in your milk. So that's why there's that range of 30 to 60 minutes. So thank you for the question. That's great. So what other questions can we answer? Is there anything that is coming to mind that you're thinking, I may or may not want to ask this, but I'm thinking it? One thing that I thought about that I often heard, because of course we've nursed, I say I, but it's a collective effort, yes, to breastfeed 4 children. It will be 5 in November that we're expecting number 5. So during the course of breastfeeding 4 children, I will say I did not abstain from the occasional glass of wine. I do love my white wine. So with that being said, though, I had a lot of friends that would say, I heard that if I have a glass of beer, that it improves milk supply, right? Not necessarily. There really has not been any studies. There's been anecdotal evidence or anecdotal stories, meaning accounts, verbal accounts and stories that moms have said, I drink Guinness or I drink this and I noticed an improvement in supply. However, there's not been any evidence or studies that have indicated that that is the case. So there's nothing that we can put our stamp of approval on as lactation consultants or associations or organizations saying that having a beer is going to improve your milk supply. There are things out there that have been shown to potentially improve milk supply, and some of those ingredients may or may not be present in alcohol. However, the beer itself does not necessarily improve supply. All right, so Mindy has a question. I'm an exclusive pumper, and if I'm feeling buzzed, would you suggest to wait to pump until I feel normal again? I hate to pump and dump, but I also wouldn't want to risk the clogs. So that's a great question, Mindy. And whenever moms ask me, do I need to pump and dump? I always tell them it's not going to rid your breast milk or your body of the alcohol faster. However, if you are extremely uncomfortable, it might be very beneficial to pump or express for even just a few minutes to help relieve some of that pressure and that engorgement. So to answer your question, it's best to abstain from breastfeeding or pumping at least 60 minutes after you ingest the glass of alcohol. It's best, even better, to wait 2 hours after your alcohol ingestion. That would be the best point to pump or breastfeed, would be 2 hours after ingesting the alcohol. So with that being said, if you're still feeling buzzed after 2 hours, depending on how much that you ingest, just know that it's at its highest level in the breast milk 30 to 60 minutes after you drink it. So keep that in mind, and I never recommend one way or the other. I just like to provide the facts, and I want you to make what decision you feel most comfortable with. So hopefully that answers your question. So Maria has a question here. It says, I heard Guinness does. One time I had 2 and I pumped about 10 ounces in one sitting. Holy cow. Of course, I was a beginner and I dumped it all because, oh no, I didn't know any better. Oh, that makes my heart hurt. So Maria, I have heard that, and especially nursing 4 children, I think it's, gosh, going on 107 months of my life, I've been breastfeeding and pumping. So I don't even want to equate that into years necessarily right now. It makes me feel old. But I have heard that, and I have had friends and clients that have said that. I'm not a Guinness fan, so I've noticed more so that it might be ingredients in that certain individuals are more prone to responding well to. Their lactation pathways and their hormonal pathways respond better to certain ingredients that they ingest. But it doesn't necessarily mean that every mother will have that result. And it's funny, there was a story I heard early on where this mother goes to her physician and she says, you know, I'm always having a hard time letting down, and I never really feel relaxed when I'm breastfeeding. And he says, well, just sit down and have a drink. Well, he didn't most likely mean alcohol, but he just meant, you know, be relaxed and comfortable and have a drink. Well, she goes back in shortly thereafter and she's with her husband, and her husband's like, we've got to come up with another solution, doc. She is just tipsy all the time. And, you know, whether it's true or not, you know, this doctor's eyes are wide, and he's like, oh my gosh, I didn't mean for you to be drinking Guinness every time you nursed, you know. So we have to be careful what we say and what we recommend, and you know, our perception is our reality, right? And we're going to believe whatever we perceive to be true. So, you know, you may have responded wonderfully to that Guinness, and I don't ever say you can't have, you know, some alcohol while you're breastfeeding or pumping, because the research doesn't indicate that. It's just all about moderation and knowing when it peaks the highest in milk and when is the best time to be nursing or pumping after you have the alcohol. So let's go and see if there are any other questions. Thanks for the info. I remember a few months ago, oh, is that Diana? I had a night out and I had alcohol and came home and pumped and dumped 12 ounces. It always makes my heart hurt. It's like that saying where they say nobody can, people that say don't cry over spilled milk have never spilled their breast milk, right? It's just so true. So you're absolutely welcome, and hi to everybody that's waving there. So we will make sure to provide the infographic that we referred to that has our top 5 tips that I would recommend as an LC. So we'll go back through those. The number 1 I would say is the rule of thumb would be that the the Dr. Thomas Hale quote, and he says, mothers who ingest alcohol in moderate amounts can generally return to breastfeeding as soon as they feel neurologically normal. So that would be a really great thing just to keep in mind. The second thing would be taking into consideration the baby's age and development. So we should use more caution when baby is under 3 months of age or if baby is premature. And again, that reason is because babies that are younger, that they are a little bit more immature in development. They're a little bit more immature in terms of their metabolism, excuse me. So they would be a little bit more prone to some of the possible negative side effects that could be from mothers that are ingesting larger amounts of alcohol. So there's just some consideration to take there as well. Let's talk about the time to wait would be the third point that we want to highlight. Alcohol peaks at about 30 to 60 minutes after ingestion. So wait until after this time to breastfeed or pump, and waiting 2 hours per drink would be the best course of action. So again, just keeping that information in mind and making the most informed choice that you feel is best for you and baby. The other point that we would look at, number 4, would be about babies ingesting less milk when mom ingests more than about 1 to 2 drinks. Studies show that babies will ingest about 20% less milk when alcohol is consumed by mom. So again, unless you're drinking all day around the clock and you're an excessive drinker, it's not a huge concern. It's just ensuring that baby has a nice, healthy feeding the next time. So the last point that we'll look at is don't pump and dump. I can't say that enough. My husband read this and he's like, pump and dump, what? But us mommies know what that means, right? That's expressing or pumping milk after drinking alcohol and then discarding it, otherwise known as pumping and dumping, does not reduce the amount of alcohol present in the mother's milk more quickly. Again, it all goes back to the amount of alcohol that you're ingesting and how your metabolism rate as to how long it will be present. So however long it's present in your bloodstream is how long it's present in your breast milk. So if you're feeling neurologically normal and safe enough to be taking care of baby, then you most likely are be fine to be nursing or pumping. So again, we'll make sure to provide the infographic that we referred to during this live question and answer. And we'll also make sure that other links and resources are available to you. On our Facebook page, we'll make sure to put all of those links on there because we know with Instagram, sometimes it's difficult to put all those links so that you can click it and go right to it and read. So head over to our Facebook page and make sure that you have all of that information that you need at your fingertips. And as always, we appreciate you all being with us and interacting. I love all the waves, all the hearts, all the thumbs up. It's fantastic. Come with your questions next week. We will be back at the normal day and time on Wednesday at noon. Again, thank you for joining us a day early as we can all make sure to celebrate and party hardy for the 4th of July. And we really hope that you guys have a fantastic celebration, fantastic week. Thanks for joining us, and you guys have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.